Will democracy survive the next couple of years?
Essentially, we are the same.
There are so many needs that Minnesota has.
What people are saying they need right now.
Access to Democracy is made possible in part by a donation from Firefly Credit Union. Firefly is the new name of U.S. Federal Credit Union, which has proudly served the financial needs of the greater Twin Cities community since 1925. At Firefly, we guide our members forward and give them the power to chase dreams by delivering the financial solutions they need to get ahead. From checking accounts to mortgages, we'll light the way. We are Firefly Credit Union, and this is life illuminated. By Thomson Reuters, providing legal professionals with intelligence, technology, and human expertise they need to find trusted answers. Thomson Reuters, the answer company. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And Dr. Charles Crutchfield of award-winning Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan. Acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians, a Minnesota native who trained at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Crutchfield personally treats all patients and states that experience counts and quality matters. Crutchfield Dermatology, look good, feel great, with beautiful skin.
Welcome. Access to Democracy returns. Alan Miller with you, and a return guest, one of our favorite and most prolific, successful authors, David Housewright, author of 22 books, among other things.
23 comes out in May.
23 comes out May 21st, and we're going to talk about that. We have both your latest book right here on display, First Kill the Lawyers, which we'll talk about, and then the new one, which I haven't read, obviously, because it's not out yet, Dead Man's Mistress. And you actually write about two different characters, investigators, but very different investigators, Rushmore McKenzie and Holland Taylor.
Yeah.
So, and actually you're turning out 2 books a year at the moment, which has got to be a chore.
It's starting to be so, yes. I'm not quite sure we're going to keep doing that. In fact, I'm pretty sure we're not going to keep doing that.
I was wondering about it because it's got to be so burdensome.
Well, it's fun and I enjoy it, but there's just so many hours in the day, and it's not just the time writing the books, but I'm involved in a lot of other things as well. I teach from time to time. There's the business of writing, going to the signings and the bookstores and the libraries.
Appearing on television shows.
Appearing on television shows. I've been negotiating with guys to talk about turning the Mackenzie novels into a TV series. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. And the writing almost becomes the last thing I do, and it can't be. It's got to be the first thing I do.
Well, especially, and you've certainly got the material to turn things into a TV series. So how do you differentiate between Rushmore McKenzie and Holland Taylor?
Light and dark. Mackenzie is a good guy. Mackenzie is rich. Mackenzie is lighthearted. Mackenzie thinks he's doing the world a favor, that he's helping to make the world a better place. There's a lot more humor in the Mackenzie novels. Much of it's self-deprecating. And he's an unlicensed private investigator. He's doing it for the fun. Taylor, on the other hand, is a traditional trench coat detective, and in the same category as Sam Spade and
the
Philip
Humphrey
Marlowe.
Bogart days.
Sure, and he's cynical, and he's not the most likable guy in the world. He's very much a loner. He's very much isolated, largely on purpose. He's a much darker character. Early in the series, I had a line in the book where he explains himself. And he said, basically, It's a matter of what he can live with. And he's always surprised by what he can live with. Mackenzie, though, has some very stringent code of honor, if you will. There are lines he simply will not cross. Taylor has never drawn a line in the dirt in his life. And so it gives me a chance to write different kinds of stories. The Mackenzie stories tend to be lighter.
Of course, Taylor needs the money also as an investigator,
Yes.
which
He's in
Rushmore
it for the-
Mackenzie does not need,
Right.
because he fell into a pot of gold.
Yes. And that comes up. I mean, there are times where Mackenzie, people try to bribe Mackenzie, and he's thinking, oh, you know, it's not that you can't be bought. It's
can
just
buy
that
and sell you.
yeah,
know,
the price goes up depending on the circumstances. So that's the difference between the two. It allows me to do different kinds of stories. Mackenzie's stories are very dark in some cases.
But it
First
may
Kill the
be-
Lawyers is very
yeah,
dark.
But actually, I don't think of that as very dark. And as one who practiced law for a number of years, I found it really interesting and challenging. Let's talk a little bit about you. You won the Edgar Award, one of the most prestigious awards. You won a lot of awards. You're president, or I don't know if you're still president
No.
of the Private Eye Writers of America. You won 3 Minnesota Book Awards. What's left?
Just to do it, just writing. You know, the awards have been fun. The doing TV shows and the signings, and I was the keynote speaker at the Rosemont Writers Festival a few weeks ago. That stuff is fun. I enjoy it. Talking to the guys about the TV series, whether that happens or not, is fun. But
Now
that's
you
not why I did it. I do it to write the book. So what's next is the next book.
Circulating around also gives you some ideas,
Sure.
and it gives you contact with people that really is important also. You started out in Cretin High School, local boy, editor of the school paper,
Yep.
for which you were dismissed as editor. They kicked you out as editor.
Yes, yes, they did. Well, you have to remember what happened. I was editor in '72. God, I'm old. I was a junior.
72.
Actually.
I have suits older than you.
In any case, I was the editor of the school paper, the Cretin Comment, in 1972. Now you have to remember, back in those days, this is before Durham Hall, Cretin was an all-boys Catholic military school, and this was the height of the Vietnam War. And we printed an anti-war editorial at an all-boys Catholic military school during the height.
And that
You would have fired me too.
And that was
So
I probably wouldn't have, because I was there with that same philosophy.
the thing is, I didn't even write it. The reason I printed it was because I thought it was good writing. It had. I wish I could say I took a stance. I wish I could say that this was my moment to stand up to the military establishment and protest the war and all that stuff. I can't do that. The simple truth is, I printed the editorial against everybody's advice because I thought it was good writing. I thought it was smart writing.
And of course, it was your head on the chopping block.
Well, I swear to God, I didn't know any of that was going to happen.
Now, you're also married to a writer who was also a well-known film critic. In fact,
Well, theater critic.
theater
Yes.
critic, excuse me. And in fact, I just read one of her articles within the last week on a local play. We've got to get her on this show here. We've never had a theater critic on the show, and we have an opening for her.
I can arrange this.
We're going to work on it, definitely. And she's a good writer to boot. In fact,
Very
she
good
co-wrote a book with you, at least one. and I know critiques your writing. Sort of.
She's the only one who gets to read my books before they go off to the editor. And I ask her for her opinion. I ask her what she thinks. I ask her how it holds up and things like that. But it's not a critique. It's not like she goes through it and tells me where I'm screwing up and things like that. She's welcome to.
Well, that's what
but
we have
she's never-
editors for.
Yeah, she's never actually done that. She'll give me some advice. She'll say, well, I'm not sure this character would say this, or things like this. She'll have questions that maybe I didn't quite answer correctly. Things of that nature. And then I listen to her and I'll do maybe half the things she suggests. But yeah, it's not quite that detailed of a relationship.
Well, we're going to work on that aspect of her career as a guest.
Okay.
So you went to the University of St. Thomas.
Yes.
And got your degree, and you went into all sorts of things, advertising, and you were with the Star Tribune for, I don't know if it was the Star Tribune then?
No, it was the Tribune.
Oh, that's
It was-
when I worked
I
there,
was
it was
there
just the
in-
Morning Tribune.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
there at the same time when it was the Tribune as well. I left, and I ended up in Albert Lea working for the Evening Tribune when the Tribune merged with the Star, and they started cutting bodies, and that's when I moved off to the Albert Lea Tribune. You have to remember, I wasn't really a full-time staff writer. I was what they called, back in those days, they called a copy aide, which they used to call a copy boy. And I did all the stuff in the office, answering phones, doing all that sort of thing, but I also did an awful lot of stringing. I would cover a lot of
remember.
events all over the place.
I can remember boy and being called by an editor. Although I did get to write some really good articles, and this is back in the 50s. Eden Prairie beat Edina 4-3 last night in a 7-inning game or something.
I did that too. I did a ton of that
Could
stuff.
have been one of my long articles, but
I covered MIAC. I covered 9-man football in Fergus Falls, and AAU swimming, and Big Ten gymnastics. I did all the stuff that the staff writers either didn't have time for or didn't want to do.
we just lost our new book, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But in addition, you have gone on to become a teacher at the Loft Literary, certainly establishment, and you've taught on writing novels, writing in general.
Yes.
It's been a very varied career, and I can see that you're kind of having fun doing all these other things, as well as the writing. I don't know where you get the time to do it all.
Well, you see, that's why I can't write 2 books a year.
So let's
anymore.
talk about, I don't know which one of our characters is not going to be around, or
Well,
maybe
they'll be around.
They'll alternate.
Yeah, they'll be around. What I'll do, Mackenzie is going to stay. And what I'll do with Taylor is I'll just try to catch up every once in a while. I already have one in the well, and we'll just see how that plays out. But I'm not going to do it on a contract basis like I do with this one.
Now, first Kill the Lawyers, sort of an offshoot of a Shakespeare quote,
Yes.
because he wanted to kill all the lawyers.
No.
You just wanted to kill the lawyers.
Well,
thing.
that's the thing. People hear that line, first kill all the lawyers, which comes from Shakespeare. I'm trying to remember which play. Henry VIII.
You got me. That's
Anyway, he didn't want to kill the lawyers. He was on the lawyer's side. Basically, what was happening is these 2 guys are talking about how you're going to overthrow a government and establish a tyranny. And the guy says, well, first, we kill all the lawyers.
And you sort of were on the lawyer's side in this book, but you had to do a lot of research for this book, because this Rushmore Mackenzie book talks about 5 lawyers whose offices were hacked
Yes.
of very confidential material. And there are 5 lawyers involved in all different aspects of law. And so you had to familiarize yourself with each of their situations to make it believable, which it was. And it was a fascinating book, and I'm glad to hear that it's moving very well, and that certainly the reviews have been very positive. So,
Well, it's, what we strive for.
you had to do a lot of research, though, for that. Whether it's talking to friends or whatever it was.
Well, I
You're
have,
talking about 5 different aspects of the law and 5 different types of crimes.
over the years, I've built up remember Rolodex?
Oh, yeah.
I built up, a Rolodex, if you will, of people. Lawyers and judges and what have you. And so I did tap these guys. They said, okay, tell me about this, tell me about that. Why does this work? Why doesn't that work? And things of that nature. And they were pretty forthcoming in how the system works. And I know, and they're telling me, a lot of people get angry at us because we do these things. But you need to do these things or the system collapses. All of a sudden, lawyers become agents of the police department and what have you, and the whole system grinds to a halt. And I am basically, even though the lawyers do some things here that are morally questionable, I'm on their side because of the ethical
Certainly
demands.
on the cusp of morality in some
Well,
cases.
that's
but,
what the book is about, is the difference between morality and ethics and how they often conflict and what individuals have
because
to do.
some of the material that's stolen from them is personally embarrassing, as well as breaking client confidentiality. And sometimes that hits home more than client confidentiality, unfortunately.
Well, to take an example from the book, guy comes up to you and admits he murdered his wife and hid her body. Not only that he murdered several other women over a period of many years.
Now, am I an attorney or not in this situation?
Well, here's the thing. He tells you this. Morally, you have to do something. You have to call the cops. You have to call the families. You have to do something. But what if you're the attorney? You can't. And it isn't just because you're protecting the client, but you're protecting the system that allows us to live our daily lives. So you end up doing the wrong thing for the good reasons and the good things for the wrong reasons.
Or you have to figure out a way to get this information known without you breaching attorney-client privilege, which is something
That's another. Well, then, you see what I mean? The
a
moral
good
dilemma
writer
versus.
like David Housewright would work on something like that.
But that's what this particular book is about. And not just the law, but also families, also friendships. Where is the line? Where do you go from one thing to the other? And yeah, it's doing okay.
So now we move to Dead Man's Mistress, which will be out on May 21st. And for those of you who want to get online now, or pre-order it from Barnes & Noble, you can do that.
You can do that.
And
Once Upon a Crime Mystery Bookstore, Minneapolis will have plenty of them.
And undoubtedly, the author will be there for a signing, and you can even get one signed.
I will.
It's Dead Man's Mistress is about our unlicensed private investigator,
Mackenzie.
Rushmore Mackenzie.
Well, this book
And,
is about legacy. It's about and art and how this works into individuals' lives. And it's a little bit lighter than First Killed Lawyers. And most of it takes place in Grand Marais, although we have a couple of side trips to Thunder Bay, Ontario, and Quebec City in Canada.
Becoming more geographic, are you?
It all makes sense when you read the book. It isn't just because I had to go to vacation to Quebec City, but it does,
It helps.
It does help, but it all makes sense why this works out the way it does. I hope. But yeah, this is coming out May 21st.
Did you stay at the Chateau Frontenac?
I did not. I was there. And there's scenes in the book that take place there. But I stayed in a B&B that was like 180 years old. And we wandered through Vieux, Quebec.
That's what I prefer.
Yeah.
When we go someplace. Now, the Chateau Frontenac, and it happens that my son Peter is visiting from Jacksonville right now, will have a certain recollection for him because it's probably the first place that I became aware that my teenage sons were smoking marijuana.
So this 250-year-old hotel, this is what it's going to be known for now. Okay. You know, it was designed by an American.
I did not know that, but that's going back some. So, in Dead Man's Mistress, we're talking about art theft.
Yes.
Suddenly, a woman discovers three paintings of a...
No, it's a little more complicated than that. What happened...
Well, see, I haven't read it, so I'm at a disadvantage.
I'm going to show you, I'm going to explain how this works. To a writer, everything is material. Every place we go, every person we meet, every conversation we have or overhear, it's all material. Now, years ago, when my daughter was still in school, she did a summer internship at the Longwood Gardens in Philadelphia. And this is this famous, iconic public gardens.
Right.
All right, so my wife and I went to Philadelphia to say hi and bum around. And I ended up at the Andrew Wyeth Museum. Now, Andrew Wyeth was an American traditionalist painter, very well known. And he, in the 80s, mid-80s, brought out a suite of paintings called the Helga Pictures. Now, what happened was that for 15 years, this guy painted Helga, the wife of his next-door neighbor, without anyone knowing it. Only Helga and him. Now, his wife didn't know it. Helga's husband didn't know it. Nobody knew it. And then all of a sudden, these paintings were discovered, and it just went. If it came out today, everybody in the world would be talking about this on the internet. But it was the 80s. And Time Magazine and Newsweek and all these institutions covered these paintings. And they talked about the relationship between the model and the artist and the 15 years and so on and so forth.
Yeah, one would have to wonder about that, certainly.
Okay. So I put that in my pocket. Fast forward about 7 years, and I have an idea. Well, what if there's a guy who is a Andrew Wyeth-like character from Minnesota, and he dies, and they discover 133 paintings that he did of this woman when he in Minnesota. And the paintings blow up and they became famous and so on and so forth. And the woman disappears. 40 years later, she reappears because she had kept 3 of the paintings. She claims that the artist gave her these paintings. Now, these paintings are worth millions, all right? And everybody wants them. The guy who bought the original suite, who thinks it belongs to him, the wife of the artist, who believes it belongs to her, part of his estate, so on and so forth. And these paintings just go poof. And nobody has seen them except her. For all these years, she's never revealed them to anyone. And then they call Mackenzie and say, hey, can you find these paintings? And that's the conceit
Are they
of the
legit
book.
paintings?
Yes.
And-
That's the conceit of the book. Is that
And that's Dead Man's Mistress, and
Yes.
that's out on May 21st. And read it to find out.
yes.
Because
That's just
we're not-
I didn't give anything away.
We're
That's
not
the first
telling
chapter.
you. We're not telling you any more than that.
No,
And,
that's-
but like all your books, I know it's going to be an interesting read.
Thank you.
And that's one of the things about your writing, is that it is an interesting read. It has a flow to it, and that's so hard to accomplish. And you have accomplished it 22 times over and then some. Even when you were in advertising, you were part of a team that won a lot of awards for the advertising that you created. So
Did
an
okay.
interesting career, but all of these things have set the path to bring you to where you are today, where you're having such a good time that you're going to have to cut back to one book a year, to your fans' probably sadness, but to your mental health positiveness. I would say.
I like the way you said that. So when people say, what are you doing? I'll go, well, it's a mental health thing.
And what comes after Dead Man's Mistress?
Well, I actually have a book in the works. I don't really have a title for it. I mean, I do. I have a working title, but I'm not sure that's what it's going to end up being, so I don't want to say. But the series will continue. Mackenzie will be out.
I was going to say another
June.
Rushmore Mackenzie.
Another Mackenzie. There will be at least one more Taylor. And like I said, we're negotiating with people, and we'll see where all this ends up.
It's always a pleasure and an education to talk to a writer who is so successful and so dedicated and really so prolific, I have to say. We have fun.
Thank you.
And you got to come back when the next one comes out, but we're going to have your wife on before then.
I have her phone number. I think we can put you in touch with her.
No problem. I have a pen right here, and we'll do that. We have been talking with David Housewright. We discussed First Kill the Lawyers, which is out now, which I can attest to the fact that is really a good read, and I can't wait to get my hands on, well, I don't want to get my hands on Dead Man's Mistress, but I do want to get my hands on the book. It's, I think getting my hands on Dead Man's Mistress would not be a lot of fun. David, thank you so much.
Well, she's alive. She's not dead.
Oh, okay.
My pleasure, sir.
Thank you.